I've been watching anime for years, but a genre I've always struggled to enjoy is mecha anime, with only a few exceptions. I know I'm not alone in this, as I've seen many other people sharing the same opinion. And the mecha community is one of the smallest sub-communities of anime. So what actually makes such a cool sounding premise for a genre be so boring in practice? Most mecha anime are political dramas. Many problems stem from this fact. Many focus on wars which don't feel personal to the characters, or give me enough reason or backstory or character interaction to make me invested, or believe that the characters care. Mecha anime just feels so distant and not personal. For me to be invested in a story, there needs to be something for me to connect to. And when it feels so unpersonal, it's very difficult for me to connect to it. I also find that a lot of characters just aren't entertaining. So many characters are just brooding, really serious, but not in a cool way characters. And it's just boring and not really interesting. In so many of these shows, it's just so serious with no moments of happiness. And it's boring and hard for me to get invested. In shows, I generally need a mix of happy and sad moments. Those are the shows that have the biggest impact. The darker moments are made even darker by the happy moments. And when there are happy moments, you feel even happier if there have been sad moments to compare them with. Character interaction in mecha anime is just also not interesting. Friends don't feel like they're actually friends, it all feels so fake and boring. Another thing that makes mecha anime so boring is the settings. Mecha anime usually either take place in space, or a war, or both. These settings are very boring. One is a black void and the other is a brown, boring dirt wasteland or a dull grey rubble city. Or worst of all, inside mechs, control rooms, or spaceships. Settings in mecha anime are just so dull and lifeless. Which, sure, shows how everyone feels and how bad the world is or whatever, but it's definitely not engaging to watch because it's just dull and boring. And again, it just doesn't feel personal. Another big part of it is mech and character designs. Most character designs are pretty bad and generic because the focus is on the mechs, but even most of the mechs aren't interesting. Once you've seen one, they mostly all look the same. The mecha genre just isn't being creatively explored. Apart from a few shows that I'll get to, you've probably heard this a lot, but silhouette is really important in character design. If you can tell who a character is only from silhouette, then it's a really good character design. But most characters in mecha anime don't have recognizable silhouettes. I want to talk about mecha anime fight scenes. The idea of massive robots fighting sounds amazing and really entertaining, but most of the time it's not. And I think that's because fight scenes rely a lot on movement and speed to create really engaging fights. And mechs have restricted movement and speed in most anime, so fight scenes feel slow and just kind of boring. And most use guns, which is just a lot less interesting and engaging than punches. When guns are used, I feel more disconnected from the fight, and it feels less concrete, if that makes sense. There's just a lot less movement. And guns will never be able to compare to the impact of a punch. It's a shame that mecha anime don't utilize punches more, as the impact for punches thrown by mechs could be so amazing. Characters and their motivations also play a big role in what makes a fight scene good, but I've found very few interesting or entertaining characters in mecha anime. For some reason, most characters are bland and not that cool, at least from my experience. And the main characters are often just soldiers or rebels. In itself, that doesn't make a character boring, but most of the time the character's motives don't feel personal at all. One more negative thing. Anything military related is just so boring to me. There are mecha anime that have none of these problems. The best example I can think of is Gurren Lagann. First of all, look at these character designs, they're so recognizable and cool. Even if you haven't seen Gurren Lagann, you probably recognize these characters. These character designs are so cool. Same goes for the mechs, they have a really unique look, with some really exaggerated features and proportions, making them stand out compared to the generic mechs in most anime. Gurren Lagann also utilizes the massive scale and size that mechs can have in a really cool and creative way. In most mecha anime, mechs are either not that big or portrayed in a way where their scale isn't emphasized, so it doesn't feel as cool. A simple way to imply or show scale and the imposing nature of these humongous robots is the use of low-angle shots. When they appear to be towering over the camera, it's really clear to see how big they are. Another way is to have something to compare it to. For example, a smaller mech or a city or something like that. And Gurren Lagann does this amazingly with mechs getting progressively bigger and bigger throughout the show, with the main character and his mechs being used as reference for the scale of things. We as the audience need something with pre-established scale, that we understand to compare to these huge mechas and understand how big they are. And Gurren Lagann uses the main character and their progressively bigger mech to compare to their opponent's mech, which is bigger. Gurren Lagann just does a really good job of showing how things are progressively getting bigger. And this progression leads to mechs being bigger than planets, and that's shown effectively. And they use this scale in a really cool way, with galaxies being thrown around. Another problem Gurren Lagann solves is the colour palette. Gurren Lagann has such a vibrant and interesting colour palette that keeps the audience engaged, and it can look really beautiful at times. Gurren Lagann is just so flashy and colourful, it's so good. Another thing is that it has characters screaming during fights and saying cool stuff. It all just adds together to create such a fun experience. Gurren Lagann is pretty special. It's just so unique. Gurren Lagann also has a lot of fast movement and explosive flashiness in fights. Gurren Lagann is the opposite of bland. Despite being so bright and flashy, Gurren Lagann has plenty of emotional and serious moments. And it's really easy to care about the characters because they're so likeable and cool. Mecha Anime has so much potential, and it's a real shame there aren't more interesting mecha anime. Exploring mecha anime for this video has made me appreciate mecha anime a lot more. I can really appreciate the writing and the complex stories and characters. But the way it's presented is just so boring to me. It's completely dragged down by an abundance of boring scenes, where people are just talking in control rooms or it's the government talking about stuff. You know what I mean. For me, those scenes are just so unbearable to watch.